watching World Talks on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. The three-day BRICS summit in Kazan has finally wrapped up, and the big question remains: has the United States succeeded in isolating Russia over its invasion of Ukraine or not? It was the first such meeting to be held in Russia since the war began, and was even attended by UN Secretary-General António Guterres, a move that very much angered Kyiv. Here with the winners and losers, the biggest takeaways of the week in Kazan, is Elizabeth Freund Larus, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, and she joins me now from Washington. Good evening.
Good evening.
So what is the biggest takeaway from the last few days? Are we seeing President Putin trying his hand at diplomacy, or is this just good PR?
No, I think this meeting was quite successful for him to demonstrate that he still has influence on the world stage. He is still a global power, and that he is not isolated. He was able to bring 36 state leaders and prime ministers to Kazan, Russia. He even got China's leader Xi Jinping and India's Prime Minister Modi to come to him. And as well as you mentioned, UN Chief Guterres. So that was quite an accomplishment. Other than that, of course, we can discuss some of the outcomes of the meeting, but overall, it demonstrated that despite the ICC issuing an arrest for him as a war criminal in March of 2023, he can still meet world leaders and continue to have influence.
Why do you think that is? Despite a literal arrest warrant, why do you think he still has that pulling power?
Well, Russia, of course, still has some, aces in the hole. With India, it sells oil to India at cheaper prices, at lower prices than before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So that works. Of course, a lot of the state leaders who came to the BRICS meeting are fellow travelers in the sense that they want to establish an alternative to the Western-led world order. Even UN General Secretary Guterres publicly said that today's international organizations were created in the past. Their mentality is in their past. Their organization, their structure is in the past. They do not reflect today's reality. So you put all these comments together, and I think the best term for this is a lot of them are fellow travelers. And Russia, of course, is hosting the meeting. That was planned, right? That Russia would host. And because he can't travel, and because he's host, they all, of course, had to come to him. And I think the West needs to really pay attention to BRICS that was only formally established in 2006. And is increasing in size, membership, and potential influence.
You mentioned the fact that leaders came to him. There was much commentary about UN Secretary-General António Guterres attending the summit. Why do you think he was there? I mean, surely he must have known what message that was sending to people and also to Kyiv.
Well, as I indicated, he publicly stated that today's international organizations do not reflect today's realities. He wants to see more inclusion of the so-called global South in international organizations, primarily, the UN and its associated bodies. Also, there's speculation that he wanted to meet Putin, one, because Guterres sees himself as a peacemaker. After all, the UN is supposed to be about, peace, peacemaking, peacekeeping, but also that there might be an agreement from Putin to a ceasefire with Ukraine in that Ukraine war. You know that Putin has been training North Korean soldiers in Russia and apparently has sent them into Ukraine. Why, for goodness sakes, are you bringing in North Korean soldiers if you have plenty of your own? So some people are looking at, okay, Putin might be ready for a ceasefire. Now, who's going to do that? You need someone neutral. You need Guterres or perhaps Modi. And maybe that's why India's Prime Minister Modi is there as well. Both of these men see themselves as peace brokers.
Despite that, though, many would say negotiations to broker peace in Ukraine need to involve both Russia and Ukraine. Isn't there a concern around the fact that the United Nations Secretary-General is going to Russia, which has invaded Ukraine, and meeting with President Putin on perhaps a peacekeeping or a peacemaking mission, but one that nevertheless seems to send some sort of a message to Kyiv?
The optics of Guterres going to this meeting are not good. It appears to give the UN imprimatur to the BRICS meeting, particularly hosted by Putin. I understand that President Zelensky of Ukraine came out with a very biting criticism of Guterres, participating in this meeting. So you're absolutely correct. I don't see that this moves the ball forward toward a peace agreement. Now, that said, a lot happens publicly, but there's also things that are happening privately. And so, of course, I am not party to some of those private discussions, but it does seem after Guterres showed up at Putin's powwow that Ukraine is going to be less likely to sit down and say, yeah, let's agree to a ceasefire.
Now let's talk about some of the key players in BRICS. They include Russia, they include China, and these are states that are widely regarded as being repressive, autocratic. How concerning do you think is their growing relevance on the world stage as part of this BRICS alliance?
It's certainly concerning to the West, and there is no way that the United States and the West should dismiss BRICS. It started off to be a small club, obviously Brazil, Russia, India, China, then South Africa, and it just added Ethiopia and Egypt, United Arab Emirates, and Iran. These are not like Western supporters. They are not supporters of Western civilization, the Western-led global order. Now, interestingly enough, however, there are plenty of other countries that want to join. Southeast Asian countries, Malaysia, Thailand, etc. There's about 4 of them, Indonesia and Vietnam, that are knocking on the door and want to join. And so while the group right now is mostly global South, some of them are friendly to the United States. Others are really anti the United States. Some of them are looking to perhaps bandwagon with China and Russia as they see U.S. leadership lacking or flagging in much of Asia. Their intention certainly is to have more influence in the UN, but also in the BRICS, where they can actually determine more of global economics, global trade, financial currency exchanges, and issues of war and peace.
What do you think is behind that broad-based interest of other countries to join BRICS? Is it a case of countries looking at economic heavyweights like Russia and China, perhaps discounting some of the human rights concerns or the autocratic concerns and going, actually, power looks a bit tasty, I want a piece of that, I want to be part of that cool club?
That's a good question. Most of the world is poor. Most of the people of the world live in what we call developing countries. A lot of them are not developing. They're just poor countries. They don't have much of a presence on the world stage. They don't have a lot of economic power. They don't have a lot of political clout. Here comes an entity, I'm talking about the BRICS, that says we can be a voice for you. If you let us lead you, we can help you. And I do see that, look, even beyond Putin, BRICS is primarily a China and a creation and a Xi Jinping, operation. For goodness sakes, even at the BRICS meeting in Kazan, Russia, when Putin was supposed to meet with Xi Jinping purposely kept Putin waiting to show I'm the one, I'm the heavyweight here. You might be hosting, but I'm the heavyweight here. And so China claims to essentially be leader of the global South, even though it's in Northeast Asia. But, look, going back to Mao's days, it wanted to be the leader of the less developed world. So leaders of the less developed world, and there were 36 of them at this meeting, are looking and saying, hey, this country, China, which is powerful, that is a powerful leader, can be our voice, because individually, for the last 70 years, we haven't had much of a voice. The World Bank and the IMF, they're located in Washington. It's a tool, of the West and of the United States. I'm saying this is their view. And they're looking for an alternative. The BRICS, Xi Jinping and Putin and Russia, they're talking about an alternative to the IMF. They're talking about an alternative to the World Bank as far as lending goes. And so a lot of these poor countries are saying, okay, this organization gives us a path forward the way the other international organizations, currently do not.
Let's talk about that side of the financial spectrum when it comes to BRICS. I mean, there has been all that chatter of BRICS countries expanding trade settlement and local currencies. I mean, could there really be a BRICS alternative to the US dollar?
Right now, it's a bit of a long road. More than 80% of global financial transactions and trade transactions are done in the US dollar. However, increasingly, China, with its trade partners, is trading in Chinese yuan. What might actually help an alternative type of BRICS-led financial, currency type system is the West sanctioning Russia, as well as some other adversaries and, non-Western countries. And so when the U.S., I'll use, Russia for an example, right? So when the U.S. sanctioned Russia, Russia now cannot participate in the SWIFT communications program. Of course, that is the communications mechanism for global financial transactions. So what's Russia going to do? Putin isn't going to sit down and take it, right? He's going to find an alternative. And so, again, a lot of these less developed countries, a lot of them are led by authoritarian governments, non-democratic governments, whatever you want to call them. And these regimes know that they can be sanctioned by the West. They can be shut out of global financial transactions. And so they are looking at some type of an alternative. And this alternative that the BRICS is trying to create would appeal to those countries because they can trade in their own global currencies. They do not have to convert to US dollars to engage in trade. If there are sanctions, of course, they cannot use US dollars. They cannot benefit from global financial institutions. So this alternative actually could be very attractive to non-democratic regimes.
Fascinating developments out of Kazan. And from Washington, from yourself, Elizabeth Freund Larus, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Thank you again for your time.
You're welcome.
And that's this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. Do stay with us. I'm Aaron Darman. Goodbye for now.